Welcome to Alabama Gristmill. We got a fun episode here today. This one's centered around the city of Tuscaloosa and a house that has a door that leads to nowhere, underground tunnels, ghosts, super thick brick walls, and the first house in the state with running water. So all these things are all tied up in one house in Tuscaloosa. But first, I want to welcome my co-host, Donna.
I'm here. Today. Happy to be here today.
And how's your weather? It's nice and sunny today.
Nice
in the
and
springtime.
sunny today. I like sunny days better than rainy days. Sunny days always bring you up, so they don't bring you down.
As usual, we want to thank you for listening and joining in. And for those who are new to the podcast, we've got one interesting thing out there if you want to be a part of the Alabama Pioneers community. This is kind of like our sponsorship. You can join the community by going to the alabamapioneers.com site and clicking Be a Patron. Really helps us out. It helps us keep this thing going. We have that, and then another way you can kind of get more information in addition to going to this website is our series of history books on in Alabama, the Alabama Footprints, and you can find those wherever books are sold. And if you don't see it at the bookstore, you can always ask for it or definitely find it online at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, etc. Tell about those books. Tell about what you've done with those books.
What we tried to do with the books is tell stories that people don't see normally in textbooks and in Alabama history books. Generally, you get most books have the same type information with a little bit added here and there. But these were stories we just happened to run across and found interesting and wanted to share. That's what they're all about. And they're kind of chronologically written. The first one kind of goes with exploration days, and we're up to Book 8 now, which I just finished with the Trail of Tears, and when the Native Americans were forced to leave Alabama. So it goes into a lot of detail about the actual treaties they made and the actual words. I went to the Library of Congress and got a lot of the actual court records, the primary records that they had in many, many books and things. And so you can get a better feeling of what it was like at that time. So, I've also...
That's what I liked. That's what I like about it. The way you've set it up in different eras. So you can kind of say all these stories about the exploration days of Alabama are tied into that one book. And they're brief stories. So it's not like you're getting in a long, dry historical reading.
They're more like vignettes or really, so you can quickly read them, and learn a little bit something about history that in Alabama that you didn't know.
And then the fact that you back it all up, like you said, in the research you've done, and you're annotated throughout the book, so it's nice to see that okay, if I want to find more about this, I can go to the actual source documents, and this is where they are. So
they're not meant. They're not meant to be textbooks, long and lengthy. They're really if they can spark your interest in certain areas, you'll know where to go look for more information.
They're very. I like I work in the world of computers, so I say they're very user friendly. Well, they are, and that you've got each from the exploration now up 8 volumes, and you now got it up into the Trail of Tears days and the Native American removal.
Yeah, and we combined. Some people wanted to buy all of them, and we tried to do it. We decided to put the first 4 into one book so that we wouldn't have to buy each one as a singular book. We're going to be doing that with the next 4 as well. That way you have the first 4 eras in one book, and it makes it a little easier.
Yeah. And it's cheaper to buy that way too.
Yeah.
So
it really winds up being
buy in bulk.
You get one free if you buy it that way.
Yeah, it's basically we're trying to make it economical as possible. So, and those are available as a paperback books and in Kindle.
We went that direction because Kindle has apps that you can download and read it on just about everything, and it just makes it easier that way. If you you don't have to read it on a Kindle. You can read it on a phone or with our free apps and your computer even with the free apps. And so that's how I've read it on iPad before. It's if you want a little quick daily dose of information in addition to the podcast here, that's a great little thing to do, a great gift to give.
wanted to kind of mention that. So those are some of the things we've got out there.
Yeah, we've also got some genealogy books on different people that you might be interested in. Basically, it's information that I had, and I'm just sharing, and more information on all kinds of things like World War I deaths and things like that to make it easier if you're doing family research. So you might look at those as well. So they're all
more resource information.
Right, you can see.
Yeah, just like general resource information for the state of Alabama.
Right. All those books help support the podcast and as well as any other, and the website as well. So that's just the way to pay the bills, I guess is what you want to say.
Yeah. And now we've got our quote-unquote sponsorship out of the way. Right. We'll go ahead and get back into the story.
Yeah.
We'll go get back to the story of this mysterious and got a nice little history on this house in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So I'll let you go ahead and get us into the story.
Right. Well, most people probably are familiar with the Jemison-Van de Graaff Mansion because it was once the library, the Tuscaloosa Library. And it's a huge house.
I wasn't familiar with it. You say most.
You're familiar with it too?
I was not.
No, I don't think you're familiar with it as much. I was going to say, I was wondering how because you went to Auburn. That would be a little strange. But anyway, anybody in Tuscaloosa or went to the University of Alabama probably is very familiar with it. And there's stories and rumors about it all the time. But I was just going to give a little of the history of it because it's very romantic history about a lot of the family that owned it. It was designed, actually, it was built for Robert Jemison Jr., who was a local planner and a politician around early 1800s, and it was designed by John Stewart, who happened to be building was a designer also for the Tuscaloosa Insane Asylum that they were building about the same time. And
that's kind of interesting that you would get this guy. Get the guy who builds the crazy people's house to build my house.
He built a lot of good things. He was doing a good job.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, okay, we're going to get the guy that builds the crazy house to build my house.
Well, what's even more interesting is there was kind of a competition going around about the time that was built. They say that Dr. Drish, who also was building a really beautiful mansion, they were kind of in competition who was going to have the best house. And they just were outdoing each other. When they were building it. So I guess that was just a way to show how much money you had, when you could, if you built a bigger house and nicer things and more conveniences inside it, then you were a little bit richer.
That hadn't changed one bit.
Show off.
That hadn't changed one bit.
Oh, no, that's still going
the case
on.
Today.
We're still doing that today.
Well, who was his wife?
He married Priscilla Cherokee Taylor. And that's kind of interesting because she's got the middle name Cherokee. And, you know.
That's an interesting name. It's like Cherokee. And so at that time was probably a pretty interesting name. So what's the story there?
Well, it is an interesting story. That's another little sidelight to this whole family story. The Taylors settled in that area around 1810, and they kind of made friends with the Cherokees that were living in the area at the time. In fact, the chief's daughter fell ill, and their medication that they were given within the tribe was not working. She was dying, so she was in real danger. But Miss Taylor, she took the child in and nursed her back to health. So the chief, when the village was about to be attacked, the chief warned the Taylors and took them into his village to protect them so they wouldn't get killed during the rampage that took place, because there was a lot of that going on about that time. In 1810, the Cherokees were really trying to stay where they were, and they weren't too happy with the whites moving in. So there was a lot of that going on. The Taylors were so, happy that they were saved, and they asked the chief what they could do to repay him, for saving their lives. And he said, well, you can name your first daughter Cherokee. Well, that was kind of a problem because their first daughter was already born, and her name was Elizabeth, and they didn't really want to change her name, so they did the second one. And the Cherokee name, believe it or not, passed down in that family for 6 generations. It just kept going on. That's where it all came from.
Well, they must have been very thankful.
They were
very thankful, I guess.
They wouldn't be here, I guess, if it hadn't been for the Cherokees taking them in. The house was built. It was supposed to have had the first elaborate plumbing system in the state of Alabama at the time. And can you imagine, it had 26 rooms. That's a lot of rooms.
Wow.
And had,
that's a big house.
And flush toilets. This was built around 1859. It had flush toilets. It had a hot water boiler and even a copper bathtub, which was remarkable.
Wow. That'd be a mansion.
Yeah, before the time, and
high
the time period.
High-tech mansion.
Yeah.
You're not heading out to the outhouse.
Nope, not around there. They used gas to light the home and a kitchen stove. In fact, they used coal. They had a coal gas plant right on the property, so they could use that to fuel everything in the house. Which is, that's amazing, because people were still burning wood and, using coal, digging it up and putting it in the fireplace. And here they had it already.
Around 1860. I mean, you're definitely.
But they didn't quite finish
you're not
everything.
living into modern luxuries.
Oh, yeah. They didn't quite finish before the house, though, before the war broke out. The blockade kind of stopped a lot of things from being brought over from Europe, and that they needed to complete the house.
Blocking all the materials.
And they didn't quite complete the central heating plant to the Grand Conservatory. They didn't get all the ironwork and marble, because that's where they got a lot of it from, is from Europe and on the ships from Mobile. And when Mobile got blocked, Mobile Bay just couldn't
since
get
the
through.
Since the war had started, how did they survive the war? I know they got to Tuscaloosa in the wartime, and I know University of Alabama was burned.
Right.
How did the house survive?
Well, it's kind of two stories. It's not real clear. The first story is that Robert Jemison Jr., who was, he was a senator during the Confederacy. The word got out that the Union soldiers were after him, so he went and hid in the swamp while his wife stayed there, and she was begging and trying to save the house, and said, you just can't burn it and all, but the Union soldiers were there with their torches ready to set it fire, and they said, no, we're going to burn it because we know who lives here, So they started to get ready to burn it, and about that time, some local boys came running down the street and throwing firecrackers and said, oh, Forrest is on his way. General Forrest was the Confederate general, of course, and they said he was coming. So there was just a few of the Union soldiers, so they decided they better get out of town. So they left. That was one story. I think that's the major story, is how it was saved. Another story was that it was a large wedding that was going on at the time, and some of the most people that were rich and famous all over Alabama were in attendance there. Jemison owned the bridge that crossed the Back Warrior, so the Union soldiers crossed the bridge, and they discovered the celebration that was going on. And somehow Jemison managed to work out some agreement, and the house wasn't burned. I guess they just didn't want to burn it with all these famous people in it and wind up creating a big catastrophe, bigger than they thought. So I don't know. And I think a lot of people lean toward the first story with the local boys and the firecrackers, but we don't know which one. But somehow it managed to be spared. After the Civil War, his daughter got married on December the 5th, 1865. Well, it was really at the end of the war. She married a Harvard graduate named Andrew Coleman Hargrove. They had a nice big celebration and a reception that was held in the big ballroom that was in the basement. During the Civil War, Hargrove had received a bullet wound to his head, and he suffered severe headaches from that injury forever and ever. I can imagine. I guess he carried the bullet around in his head or something, because it was very tragic. Anyway, it became so unbearable that on their 30th anniversary, on December the 6th, 1895, he shot himself in the library. I guess it got too severe to stand, and she went into hysterics, and she just remained in a deep depression for the rest of her life. She never married again or anything, but they say that she and her husband still haunt the house, so there's some paranormal activity going on. Later on in life, in 1890, Jemison's granddaughter, Minnie Cherokee, there's the Cherokee name again, married Van de Graaff. That's where the Van de Graaff name comes in, and he moved into the mansion. And Adrian was a substitute player for the Yale 11-man football team. He became a professor of law at the University of Alabama, and in 1892 they fielded the first football team there. So the football tradition continued on in Alabama, and that's kind of where a lot of this started. They had one daughter, and they named her Cherokee because they had to carry that name forward.
Of course.
And then 4 sons, Adrian, Hargrove, William, and Robert. And Robert Jemison-Van de Graaff was born on December 20th, 1901 in the Jemison Mansion. Although Adrian wanted his children to all go to Yale and play there, they couldn't really afford it. After the war, a lot of people that had a lot of money couldn't afford to send their children where they weren't as wealthy at that time. They were destitute. Even though they had these big mansions, they still didn't have much money in the South. So they couldn't afford to send their children to Yale. So they went to the University of Alabama, and they earned positions on the varsity football team in 1910, and William joined in 1912. William was known as Bully and was America's first All-American, and he later became an inventor of the Van de Graaff generator. So he was very famous as well. And through his discoveries, he became one of the founders of high-energy physics. Now we're into the Great Depression era in the 1930s, and of course, you know, they were probably trying to struggle along for many years since the Civil War, keeping the house because it was so huge, and you can imagine the expenses it cost to keep it up.
Well, during the Depression, it would not be the easiest to do.
It would not be easy, so the house was sold, and it was converted into apartment buildings for low-income families, and it housed about 13 families, believe it or not, for about 10 years. That's a lot of families in one house. I guess, you know, you think about it, they had 26 rooms. So.
Yeah, 28 rooms or however many rooms, yeah.
It could do it.
You could have plenty of room for 13 families. I guess they have 2 rooms each, 2-room apartments or something. But anyway, it passed on out of the family and went into the Birchfields back at around 1940s. And the Birchfields restored it after all that time. And in 1955, the YMCA bought it for $70,000, which was pretty good bit of money back then, but for that much of a house. It was later exchanged for property. The library exchanged it for property from Victor Hugo Friedman, and he donated the mansion to the city of Tuscaloosa, and that's when it became the Friedman Library. Now, is this library, is it it's not on campus, is it?
No, it's off campus. It's off campus, but it's near the campus.
But it's with the city of Tuscaloosa now.
Uh-huh.
You know, now that the city's got it up and it became the Friedman Library.
Right.
You did mention that it was haunted by the Hargrove family.
Yeah, by the Hargrove Cherokee and the Hargrove who killed himself.
Is there still any evidence of the...
Well, they just said that they've saw an unknown girl lingering on the grand staircase, so they don't know who that was, you know, and they've seen... So there's some evidence of children around. And a child's handprint was left on a mirror in a room that was supposedly closed off, so they don't know how it got there. And occasionally you'll hear music, and could be Cherokee, I guess, playing, because girls really play piano a lot, and heavy footsteps when no one was in the house. And they've even heard sound of china cabinets crashing to the floor. And the most startling thing, though, I guess at times some brides had been married there, and one was preparing for her wedding, and all of a sudden a wall mirror was thrown across the room. And I imagine that kind of startled her wedding plans that day. But those are some of the instances that they've actually recorded. I'm sure there are more. There are many, many stories. And
yeah, well, I mentioned earlier there's a possibility of a tunnel under the house. What's that all about?
Yes, there's a rumor of a secret tunnel that goes from the Black Warrior River back to the house. And the people used to think, there's rumors that it was a way that the slaves would escape through the Underground Railroad or something and get out that way. But what it really comes down to is that it seems like it was a form of refrigeration in the dry well in the basement. It was a good way to keep the food cool. It was some smart planning. It's one of the inventions they made when they were building the house. It had so many new things that people had never thought of before.
The tunnel is actually there.
Yeah, well, evidently it is. I don't know if anybody's been through it, but I don't think it's actually a tunnel.
Are the tunnels actually there? I imagine somebody's probably gone and investigated. Did anybody like a TV crew or anything do that?
WVUA in Tuscaloosa did 3 stories on it, and you can find them on YouTube, and I've also linked them on the website. So you can see them as well. But they found that it's basically a big box in the basement, and you can look down there, you can see a big hole, and people are assuming it's a tunnel that goes all the way to the river. Now, I don't think there's a tunnel there. It's just the rumor that that's probably what it is, because nobody ever seen anything like that before. But it's probably a tunnel that goes some ways deep, and it brings up cool enough air to cool the food that they were trying to.
That makes sense to me. Practical solution,
right? And with all the inventions,
it's a simple problem with a practical solution.
Yeah, and with all the inventions that they had at the time, in the house, it makes more sense that that's what it was. So actually, there was no tunnel all the way to the river. It's a romantic story, but it's not really, evidently not really true. So.
But he was a fascinating character, the Van de Graaff was, and definitely coming up with the technology at the time with the Van de Graaff generator.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely
very
helped
smart
in
people.
Physics and so you had your kind of like your Elon Musk in Tuscaloosa.
You kind of wonder, did Stewart come up with these inventions for the mansion, or did the Van de Graaffs or the Jemison family or some of them in there? Because it sounds like they were all very smart, going to Yale and all this. It kind of reminds you of Thomas Jefferson, how he got involved in Monticello. People really got involved in building their houses back then, and the more elaborate, the better.
It's their castle.
Right.
It's their castle. So can you go visit the mansion now?
Yes, the mansion was deeded to the Jemison-Van de Graaff Mansion Foundation, and it's a not-for-profit foundation, and they restored it to its glory. And now it's open to the public, and it's free, and you can go visit it from 10 to 3 and during the week. You can also
I just actually pulled up the website. It looks like it's actually 10 to 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Monday through Friday, and you can ask for guided tours if you call ahead. So it's a wonderful opportunity to visit a really historic place in Tuscaloosa if you take advantage of it.
So it's JemisonMansion.com, and you can find the information out how you can visit. They also rent it out, of course, for weddings and events. So hopefully it doesn't come with the package where the mirror is thrown across the room.
Yeah, that would be kind of exciting.
Haunted guest.
You might have extra guests at your event if you go there. That would be kind of exciting.
I think those stories tend to get too romanticized.
Yeah, I think kind of like the tunnel. It was all kind of stories going around about that.
So but you could always check it out for yourself. And they on the website, they do want to point out they do have a virtual tour, so you can actually go take a look at the different rooms in the house and all the pictures of the mansion on the site as well. So. But that's you can find that at Jemison Mansion. We'll have it linked through the show notes and then also on the website, AlabamaPioneers.com. So,
there's very few buildings in Alabama that have that many rooms. You can imagine 26 rooms. So this is a true mansion. So it would be a wonderful place to visit.
And then on the engineering side, for me, the home of the Van de Graaff invented the Van de Graaff generator. It was a big invention, and has definitely increased our understanding of physics and technology in the time. So that's fascinating as well.
It is fascinating. A lot of fascinating information about the whole family, including football.
Oh, you got to bring it back to football.
I got to bring it back to football. I mean, he was at the beginning of it. So you got to bring it back there. You can't forget Alabama football.
Absolutely. Well, that's another look at a little part of history in the state of Alabama. This particular spot is the Jemison Mansion, in Tuscaloosa.
Jemison-Van de Graaff.
If you get a chance.
Van de Graaff at the end, because that's who has it now.
So if you get a chance and you're in Tuscaloosa, you want to see what the height of technology in the mid-1860s, 1800s,
1859 is when it was built.
Yeah. And go check out the house and see if you can hear any noises or music or anything like that as well. Get back to us.
Yeah, if you hear of anything, let us know.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. And if you've got, as usual, if you've got any comments or questions, pop us an email at info@alabamapioneers.com, or you can comment on Facebook on our Alabama Pioneers page on Facebook. We post all these episodes up on Facebook as well as all the different formats out there. So you can put comments there as well if you got any questions or have any other comments you want to add to the story. So thanks a lot for listening. And until next time, we'll let Rod Foley play us out with a little Alabama Jubilee. We'll see you later on.
See you later on.
Dancing round on his toes, throws away his crutch and hollers, hey, let her go, oh, honey, hey.